These are definitely interesting times we're living in. I've been doing a lot of thinking lately about all the changes that are taking place in our world and wondering what things are going to be like on the other side. I was thinking of some things that I've read, and I thought maybe I would share those with you in hopes that you might find some encouragement from them too. First of all, I read an article in the Guardian magazine, and it was written by Peter C. Baker on March 31st, and this is a portion of that article. Cast your mind back a few weeks and imagine someone telling you the following. Within a month, schools will be closed. Almost all public gatherings will be canceled. Hundreds of millions of people around the world will be out of work. Governments will be throwing together some of the largest economic stimulus packages in history. In certain places, landlords will not be collecting rent, or banks collecting mortgage payments. And the homeless will be allowed to stay in hotels free of charge. Large swaths of the world will be collaborating with various degrees of coercion and nudging on a shared project of keeping at least 2 meters between each other whenever possible. Would you have believed what you were hearing? Things are certainly different. And it made me think back to a book that I read back in the 80s, the late 80s, I guess 40 years ago. The book is called When God Has Put You on Hold, and it was written by Bill Austin. And the subtitle for the book is Living Productively in the Meantime. And he wrote this book based on a sermon that a man named Carlyle Marney had delivered in 1963. And let me share a little bit from Carlyle, the man who gave the original sermon that prompted Bill Austin to write this book. Most of life is lived in the meantime. If a man does not learn to live in the meantime, he is less than half alive. All ages are restless ages to the people who live in them. All times are critical to people who have problems. All roads are weary roads when we have too far to walk. People do not like to wait. This is a badge of our immaturity. People have always had to live waiting for something. Usually they wait for peace in times of war. People stand in line most of their lives. They wait for a pass, or they wait for a friend, or a break, or payday, or death. They wait for quitting time, or the installments to be paid out, or the doctor to come. They wait for prosperity, or independence, or comfort, or restoration. They wait for their youth to come back, or for power, or for revival. They wait for the Republicans to get in or out, for stocks to go up or down, for the mailman, or sometimes, when they are pastors, they lean back against the corridor wall of the hospital with a fellow and wait for the undertaker to come. Practically all of life is lived in the meantime. If we do not learn to live in the meantime, we find ourselves less than half alive. I thought those were some interesting words. And this book is no longer in print, so I am going to share some of the things that are in it. But first, I want to share a little bit from the scriptures that Bill Austin has based this book upon. Back in the time of the Israelites being taken into captivity in Babylon, when Judah was taken away, there's a psalm, and I'm not going to remember which number it is, but it talked about, by the rivers of Babylon, we sat down and wept when we remembered thee, Zion. And then they talked about how they couldn't sing their songs in a strange land. And so those from Judah who were taken away were lost. They were away from their homeland. They didn't know how to behave or what to do. Well, God had Jeremiah the prophet write a letter to the captives in Babylon. And Bill Austin suggested that that letter is helpful to us because we need to learn to live creatively and productively in meantime situations. And so this book is kind of a how to survive when we don't know what's coming next. And most of us in our isolation don't know what's coming next. We hear that it's going to get worse before it gets better, and that things are never going to be the same again. So let's take a look at the timeless wisdom from the book of Jeremiah, chapter 29, and I'm going to read verses 4 through 14. Thus says the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, to all the exiles whom I have sent into exile from Jerusalem to Babylon: build houses and live in them, plant gardens and eat what they produce. Take wives and have sons and daughters. Take wives for your sons, and give your daughters in marriage, that they may bear sons and daughters. Multiply there, and do not increase. But seek the welfare of the city where I have sent you into exile, and pray to the Lord on its behalf. For in its welfare you will find your welfare. For thus says the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel: do not let the prophets and the diviners who are among you deceive you, and do not listen to the dreams that they dream. For it is a lie that they are prophesying to you in my name. I did not send them, says the Lord. For thus says the Lord: only when Babylon's 70 years are completed will I visit you, and I will fulfill to you my promise and bring you back to this place. For surely I know the plans I have for you, says the Lord, plans for your welfare and not for harm, to give you a future with hope. Then when you call upon me and come and pray to me, I will hear you. When you search for me, you will find me, if you seek me with all your heart. I will let you find me, says the Lord, and I will restore your fortunes and gather you from all the nations and all the places where I have driven you, says the Lord, and I will bring you back to the place from which I sent you into exile. There are 8 things that Mr. Austin tells us we can learn from this passage. They were in a situation where they didn't know what to expect. They were away from their homeland. And their prophets amongst them were telling them, oh, everything's going to be okay. It won't be long. And God sends this letter that says it's going to be 70 years. So some of those people receiving this letter are never going to leave this land. But the young people, they have a chance to go back and live in the promised land. So here are the 8 things. The first thing is accept the reality of things. When it comes to our situation, this is a global pandemic. And though there are perhaps the Spanish flu they're making comparisons to, we really don't know how bad this is going to be. We know that economies around the world are collapsing, that our healthcare systems are having difficulty keeping up with the disease itself, that people are isolated in their homes, that our regular social and civic responsibilities are being altered immensely. And yet there are those who are leaving their houses and going about and doing things the way they feel because they're convinced that it's not really all that big a deal. It's a big deal. And we need to accept it for what it is. It's an unknown, and it's supposed to get worse. We just need to accept that, as frightening as it is. Number 2, see God behind the scenes. Just as the nation of Judah had God working in the background and participating in their captivity, I'm not suggesting that, like sometimes in the Old Testament when God sent plagues, that this is a plague that God has sent to us. We don't have any proof of that. But what I do know is that God is on his throne, and nothing is happening to our world that God isn't aware of. And God is capable of revealing what will cure this. And God knows what's best for us. And so God is working behind the scenes. Number 3, it's a little humorous for our circumstances, but it says get back to work. You know, here we are in our homes trying to do our work, those of us who still have jobs, and there are those who've lost their jobs or are laid off from their jobs and have no idea when they'll be able to take them back up again. But there are other things that we can do as work. We could make choices to sit around and Netflix binge and play video games. That could be one way of our spending all this extra time that we have that's not going toward activities or our other responsibilities that we had to curtail. They were told to build houses and plant gardens. Well, there isn't any reason why we couldn't plant a garden. There isn't any reason why we can't do our spring cleaning, and very well right now, because the cleaner we are, the safer we are. There are all kinds of things that we can do. And instead of frittering away all of our time, we need to find things that are productive and helpful. Number 4 is consider the family. They were told to marry and have children and have their children marry and have children because it was going to be 70 years there. Lord willing, it is not going to be anywhere near 70 years for us to be able to come out on the other side of this coronavirus pandemic. But while we're isolated in our homes with our family members, we can strengthen those bonds and those relationships that we have. And with all the technology that we have today, we don't have to be in the very same place in order to be able to strengthen our relationships. My dad's up in Pennsylvania, and I've probably spoken to him more in the past month than I have last year. I'm concerned about him, and I'm checking in on him regularly. And don't just think of your immediate family. Think of your extended family, and think of your spiritual family. And I'd like to suggest that you specifically think about the individuals who are in isolation alone. Not everybody has a family surrounding them to spend time with. And though for some people that may be driving them crazy, being alone by yourself in a time like this is not a picnic. And so reach out to those people, young or old, who are by themselves, and make sure they know that you're thinking of them. I mean, use all this technology that we've got, Teams and Zoom and Skype and FaceTime. We can see them and we can interact with them. Just the other day, I spent over 2 hours just knitting and talking to a dear friend of mine. We can still interact and we can strengthen those relationships. Your physical family, your spiritual family, your friends. At times like this, we're all family and we're all in this together. Number 5 talks about burying the hatchet. And in this case, in Jeremiah, he's talking about seeking the peace of the city. Yes, the Babylonians were the ones that drug them off into captivity, but they're going to have to live amongst those people for 70 years. And God says, seek the peace of this city and do the things that are in their best interest, because their welfare is going to be your welfare. And so we could be angry and upset and saddened about all the things that are happening, and those are appropriate emotions. But at the same time, we also need to make sure that we are not drowning in those emotions. Take a look around you. What are the things that you can do to bring about the welfare of others? I've got some friends and some relatives who are sewing masks, and by the hundreds, and giving them away to their friends and family, and particularly donating them to hospitals. God bless our healthcare workers. How they're doing what they're doing with the limited supplies that they have is heroic. And we can do things that can be helpful to those individuals by donating things. Number 6 is reject false hope. In Jeremiah, there were false prophets who were telling the people, everything's going to be okay, it's going to be great. And God said, I never said that. You're going to be in captivity for 70 years. Well, in our situation, there are people who are trying to find quick fixes and are willing to spend their money and risk themselves for things that are not legitimate. I can't remember what country it was, but there were people who had announced that a particular medicine is what people needed, and these people went out and took the medicine, and hundreds of them died. Now is not the time to gamble with our lives on foolishness. We do have hope, but let's not hitch our wagon to false hope. Make sure that you're not following misinformation and inaccurate information. Check out your sources and make sure you don't take action until you really know that it's legitimate information that you have and that's going to be beneficial. Number 7 is to pray and seek a way out. God knows what's best for us. And if we devote ourselves to prayer and letting Him know our concerns, He will help us. We can pray for wisdom, we can pray for strength, we can pray for protection, all of those things. And we can pray for Him to help us know what's the best way for us to make a positive contribution to our circumstances. And last, number 8, prepare for the future. We do have a future. We don't know what it's going to be. We don't know if we'll lose loved ones. We don't know if we'll lose our own lives. We don't know whether we will come out unscathed on the other side. But there will be a future, either here or in the next life. And so we need to be preparing for that. Well, we don't know what it is, so how do we prepare? Well, one of the things that we can do is work on our physical strength and our spiritual strength and our emotional, social strength. Work on growing closer to your loved ones. Eat healthier. Get exercise. Trying to stay healthy in all the right ways, and that way if we do end up with the virus, we don't have as compromised a health. Make sure that you're keeping your mind and your psyche in good shape. Read what you can that's going to be helpful, and rely on the Lord. Lots of changes taking place right now, and it's a little unsettling. But what's not changing is that God is on His throne. He's the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow. And if we will lean on Him, we will come through this, either with Him in eternity or continuing to serve Him here in whatever capacity it is that He has waiting for us. God bless you all. Stay healthy. May the Lord bless you and keep you and give you peace and calm and comfort you. We can trust Him.